what works for you. Within doing this jewelry box, I decided it'd be a good chance to kind of recondition the life of my 45-degree Mitre Sled. Now, this is old. I built it for an old table saw, but it still worked, so I never did rebuild one, which we probably will do at some point, but for now, for the sake of time, I'm going to repurpose it and get rid of the... replace these hardwood runners with new ones because these do not fit the new slots. So, we're going to cut some new ones, and I'll show you how I'm going to attach them and line everything up properly. Okay, so we're back, and we're going to set up the runners for our 45 Mitre Sled. Yeah, I've got this piece of ash here, seeing as that's generally the hardwood I use in most of my builds. I have this piece here, which I have already taken over the joiner, and flattened this face, and these two edges, which would be, again, I had a planer at the moment, it'd be great, but I did find out, actually, the motor is blown in my planer, so they have ordered a new one, but we have to wait for it to come in. So hopefully within, I'm hoping a week, but I am pretty sure that's way too optimistic. So we'll just have to wait and see and make do as we can. So what I'm going to do, I have actually taken my crappy little calipers here and measured the distance on my miter slots. And it actually turns out to be about a 32nd over 3/4 of an inch. So I have my blade set a 1/16 over, so we can make our cut and make sure it'll obviously be just a little too big. Then we can just micro adjust till we get the exact width we want. Remember, your blade just barely past the height of your material is the best way to cut. A half a tooth to a tooth over. So make sure you have your flat side down, and when your planed edges or jointed edges up against your fence, and that will again ensure that you are going to get the straightest cut possible. Now we'll make our second pass for our second runner by flipping over to our second jointed edge. Exactly a 1/16 over. So because I know my fence is calibrated properly, I can just actually go by my indicator. So I am going to move back to what I know to be a 32nd over, and just for the sake of consistency, measure. Now, if you don't have 30 seconds on your square or your ruler, like I don't, use the space in between the 1/16ths. It's pretty easy to judge what's the middle of a 1/16 of an inch. So do your best, because you don't have to be 1,000,000% accurate, just very close. So we'll go. I think that's probably going to be good to give us a nice tight fit. And then once these are done, we'll wax them, and they should glide nice and straight and true. Let's try this again. Find my jointed face. Yeah, we're still a tad off. Not by much. I would guess not more than 64th. Dial it back just a tad more. Ah, we're getting really close now. Now that I've got that very close, all I'm going to do is run it over my jointer just to true it up. Alright, I went to the jointer and I took next to nothing off. I mean, it was less than a 64th. You could barely hear it hitting the wood. As the point was to just clean it up a bit, just to get basically the saw marks off, or the saw blade marks from when we ran through the table saw. Now, as you can see, actually, I found that my slots are just slightly off from one another. So this one is for the left, which fits in there just a little tight. Right slot. Oh, hold on. Backwards. Now, they move, there's a little bit of resistance, but by the time we wax them, which I'm going to do right now, easier to do now than when it's already attached, there shouldn't be any resistance, just they sit in there very nicely. So, I'm going to take my, what is it called? Tree wax. It's just a floor wax. Just going to take some, get it on my sponge here, find my direction. Now, so if you do want to glue it down just for a little extra hold, don't put the wax on that edge that's going to be glued up to your Mitre Sled, because the glue won't stick once there's wax on it. You'd actually have to sand the wax off. So I've already designated which direction orientation these are going to be, so I know where I'm going to apply the wax. So I'll do the side, well, both sides, and the bottom of these runners. Now, this wax is awesome. I mean, it makes all the difference in the world. If you don't have any, on your table saw top, on your fence, on your jointer, on your planer bed, anywhere the wood's going to rub in contact, this stuff will reduce the friction to make your tools perform wonderfully. This stuff makes a huge difference. As you can see, that just runs beautifully, and there is no play whatsoever. Big deal. Easy rub on, and you wait about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then you just wipe off the excess, and you're left with a friction-reduced surface. So there it is. Again, what a difference. And these slots have already been waxed when I did my tabletop, so if you're feeling friction or you haven't done this, I strongly recommend you get some and put it on all of your tabletops. Whether you're joiner plane or what. Not your bench. You want as much friction there as you can. But as anywhere that you're going to be running wood through, this stuff makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so now we have these waxed. I have wiped off the excess. They work beautifully. Next step is to set them in place, but first we have to raise them up. So underneath of these runners, I'm going to place these little, like M10 nuts. They're going to raise it up about 1/8 of an inch, so that when we set our sled on top, it won't be touching the table itself. So, just going to set these in the tracks here, and that will raise us up to the right height so that we will be able to attach our runners. So now, I'm just going to set that in place, move them up a bit, and now in order to keep our our sled straight, we're going to use our fence. You could do measurements, but I know my fence is straight, so I'm going to put this in place. Try not to move these sleds around, or the tracks, just to where this is going to line up with my blade roughly. And then I'm just going to push this up against my fence, and then I will lock it in place. So now, when I put this up against here, I'm square to the table and these tracks, which is important because once you attach this down, these tracks need to be straight or you're going to get binded and caught up. So now with that said, we can go ahead and actually attach them to our sled. And I couldn't find 3/4 inch screws, so these inch long screws are going to have to do. I have wrapped a piece of tape around my drill bit, which this point here is just under an inch, about 7/8 of an inch, so I know how far down to drill. So now, first things first, I'm going to add just a couple dabs of glue just to help it stay in place, and then after the glue is set for a few minutes, about 10 minutes, it kind of gets tacky, then we will drill our holes and put our screws in. I like to give the glue a couple minutes to set up because it reduces the chance of this moving while we're drilling, so we'll put a little bit of glue on, and then we will set our sled on top of it. Now I don't want a whole lot, I just want a little bit, a couple dabs. I don't want a lot of squeeze out to go over my saw. And I forgot, I have an overhang. I've made these runners slightly longer than my sled, just to give me a little extra balance in case I have to go out past my saw, which I probably won't ever do, but it's there in case I do happen to need to set it on. Now I have lined these runners up with the edge of my cast iron top, so that I know they're sitting in the exact same position, orientated through the fence and the miter slots. So just line up with the edge, and then we're going to take our sled, just going to set it down ever so gently. We don't want the runners to move around on us, we want them to stay where they are. And remember, we positioned this earlier, the fence, to where we want our sled to sit. So make sure when you set it down, you kind of run it straight down the edge of the fence and you're pushed against it gently. So with that, I'm just going to measure out how much distance I have here of my overhang, because I had it before at 1.25 inches. So try to hold down these slots, or these runners, and move the sled back at the same time. Just a little bit further to go. I already feel the glue starting to grab, which is good. Okay, that's close enough. Just about 1.25 inches at the front, and then 1.5 inches at the back. Just a little bit extra runner in case it's ever needed. My very fancy weight system. Half a 5-gallon pail of paint, which apparently isn't going to set down very easy. There. Again, make sure I'm up against my fence. Make sure the runners haven't moved around on me. They look right where they're supposed to be. So I think we're good. We'll let this sit for a few minutes and we'll come back and put our screws in. Alright, so this is sat. It's sat about 10 minutes. Now it's down there good enough so you can move it around. And I accidentally moved that nut. Alright, so keep in mind your depth at all times. Now I've already marked where my runners are. It's pretty obvious. We're just going to find roughly the center. And we're not going to go past our tape line for our depth. Now we're just going to run our countersink bit so that the head of our screw is recessed below the surface and not going to interfere with any material we're working with on our sled. Remember not to go too deep unless you have a smaller screw length. Like I said, inch was the only thing I had, apparently. I have to go get some more screws. Had to do. Now Now I'm just going to run them in, and then I'll snug them up with a screwdriver. We don't want to over-tighten them. Especially with MDF that can pull through. But it is pulling hardwood up, so you might get away with it. But I always think it's a decent idea to snug them up with a screwdriver anyways. Alright, turn them in, below, make sure they're below your surface. Don't need it catching any material that you're working with. Don't want to go too far. These are going to go through the other side of the runners. There, that should do it. Just like that. Get rid of the dust from the drilling. And we can remove our spacers. Now, we're able to put our sled in. I didn't do that. As you can see, she works just great. Nice movement in it. That wax really makes a difference. Now we have a sled that we can cut our 45s on. Probably be nice to have a slightly bigger one, but I don't have time at the moment to make one, so this is just going to have to do. So, with that said, thanks for watching. I hope this gave you some ideas. Maybe you want to build one of your own, or maybe you got one that just needs a little fixing up like this one. Either way, I thought I'd share it with you. So, there we go. 145-degree Mitre Sled. There's no reason you can't just use the same as crosscut sled, but problem is you get a great big gap like this one has here if you go to do both cuts. If you go to do a mitered cut, and then go do a cross cut, you end up cutting that whole piece right out, unless you've got it attached with a screw or something on the underside. But I've got two. One for 45s, one for that, and at a later date we'll probably make a whole new sled, but for now this will do. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and don't forget to leave your comments. Check us out on Facebook, Pinterest. There's another one I'm not thinking about. Facebook, Twitter. Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter. Go check us out. Don't forget to subscribe. Again, hey, did I say subscribe? You should subscribe. I like it when you subscribe. I like people subscribing. The point of this channel is to bring stuff to you, so if you don't subscribe, then you're not going to see the upcoming builds, especially video 2 of the jewelry box build, which will be coming out in the next few days. So keep an eye out. Till then, stay safe, work safe. Thanks for watching.